Hello, hello,
Hey,
everyone. I think we're live. So it's
we
live on
are
my
live.
side.
Yes, we are. Just need to get
Nice.
my Instagram going. It's coming in shortly, but yes. Hey, Ashley, happy Sunday to you.
Happy Sunday, Constantine. Super excited for our conversations as always.
Likewise, likewise. And same for everyone listening. Welcome, welcome. Today we have, I guess, a topic that stays on theme with the week, right? Love, self love, and abundance. Now, of course, we may drift as we sometimes do, but
Yep.
that's what we're going to talk about. So, Ashley, let's kick it off. What does Valentine's represent to you now that you've been able to go down this path of perhaps having a better understanding of what love is, self love, all of
Yeah.
that, and how this, let's call it, big event that everyone seems to be really excited about, how does it look to you these days?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, like my immediate response to that question, which I know is not what you're seeking, is that Valentine's Day is a day for Hallmark flower companies and chocolate people.
Hmm.
It was really created out of this false sense. But if we take it to a deeper level, and I will go there, is it's really created out of that special relationship, that special
Yes.
love, the ego love, the I think we touched on it last Sunday, like the five love languages love. That is conditional love. I only can receive your love if X, Y, and Z. And, I think that really goes into the concept of Valentine's Day. It's very much a conditional day. Even myself got cut up. Patrick's like, we don't celebrate Valentine's Day here. And I'm like, what? Everybody
Yeah.
else does. And I really found myself in that special love of the ego when it's the same as every other day. And showing your love is not about doing things, right? That's the really interesting thing when we get on this topic of love and self-love is we think it's doing, but the problem is you are unconditional love. So love is actually just being. But the problem is we have all these layers. I think we talked about the onion last week, that are in the way of us just being what we truly are, which is love. Like it is not something that we need to cultivate. It is not something that we need to learn. It is not something that we need to actively show. Instead, it's something that we can only get to through unlearning and remembering. And then it just is. It's like you just are.
That's so beautiful. It's interesting because the more I go down this path as well, Ashley, and I know our journeys are similar yet very, very different, and we're at different stages. This comes up as well, right? You get caught up in the ego games so easily, and I got caught up as well. And you're surrounded by people that perhaps aren't as far on their journey, and they want to celebrate as a holiday like this. And there's nothing wrong with it because you're celebrating love, if it's for
Mhm.
love, right? And I've seen a lot of reports and things that I've been talking to people where like, if someone doesn't get a gift or if someone doesn't get what they were expecting out of the day, then it pretty much ruins everything else. When really the day should be about celebrating love, like you said. And then it's like every other day. You celebrate the love for what? For yourself, for the special someone in your life if you have someone, and if not, everyone else. But it starts with you, and that's what I was struggling a bit on. I guess was it Thursday? Yeah, Thursday was Valentine's, or Wednesday actually.
Whatever day. Yeah,
Yeah,
Wednesday.
whatever day. I woke up and I was like, hey, you know what? Like, what can I do special for me today? Of course, I had a day planned with my partner, but what can I do for me? And that was not easy to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Not always, anyway. Not always. So, I love that you went. But I'm curious. You mentioned something about unconditional love, right? Which is, of course, it's a hot topic these days, and it's something that comes close to my heart. Because if you look at everything that happens in society and how we are raised, I don't see many people that have reached that level to be truly have unconditional love, like let's say an animal might have for you, like my dogs. And I wonder why that's the case. And I know you
Mm-hmm.
talk at length about this, but I'd love to pick your brain rather on why you think unconditional love is so hard to strive for and attain.
Well, I mean, oh my gosh, there's so much in that question, Constantine.
Yeah.
And, I think there's a few key things you said in there. So one is you talked about Why is unconditional love so hard to obtain, so hard to get to? Which again makes it as like this foreign entity outside of ourselves. So immediately you just put up like,
Yep.
holy shit, you know, we talked about last week. If I tell you, Constantine, go find the treasure versus remember where you put the treasure, which
Love it.
sounds easier, which sounds more obtainable. And even just the way you talked about, which no bad to you, that's how we're taught to talk about
Mhm,
it,
mhm.
so that it seems like this unobtainable state when really it's what you are. You are unconditional love. So you don't have to become anything. It's the process of unbecoming. It's the process of peeling back the layers of the ego, the smoke and mirrors, to be that extension of love that you are. I want to touch base a little bit about on your guilt about the day and celebrating it. So first of all, no ill will on anyone. Like, that's just our choice. And the goal here is not to place weight on anything. So essentially, if I place weight on celebrating it, like you talked about, where people are like, if I don't get a gift, if I don't get this, if I don't get that, you've placed weight. Is just as bad if you place weight on, like, I'm not celebrating Valentine's Day because it's crap and it's this and it's that. So it's weird. Like, you just got to be in the middle. Like, yeah, celebrate it. Yeah, don't. There's no salvation contingent on it, meaning your happiness and peace, right? And I think a lot of times in everything we get caught up in that. But you said, what could I do special for myself today? The goal I believe we're both on, even though our journeys look different. And I think the majority of the spiritual movement's goal is, you know, Eckhart Tolle says, like, the power of now. You know, Ram Dass says, be here now. We're all focused on living in the present moment so much. So my question is, if we're so focused living on the present moment, and we have this intellectualized understanding that all that exists is the present moment, then why are we waiting till a certain day? Because in fact, that day never actually exists except for in the present moment. So why would you have been waking up on Wednesday been any different than you waking up on Tuesday?
Exactly. I love the question. And I love the
No,
perspective.
that's really a question to you. I want to hear your,
Oh,
like, what are your
oh, wow.
thoughts?
Okay, 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 okay. I thought it was more like a rhetorical question.
No.
It has to do with looking externally, right? It's that conditioning that you talked about. And for those listening, and I think you know this part already, but for those listening that don't know, I was someone that always looked externally for answers, meaning that I thought that everyone else had the answer and I had to listen, right? Teachers, parents, mentors, coaches, whatever. And to answer your question, that's pretty much the same way I see it. It's like, yes, I've made a lot of progress. I've gotten myself to a point where I listen to myself a lot more than I listen to anyone else. But at the same time, the ego game still gets played. Or it's like, oh, but you know,
Mm.
everyone is talking about you gotta do this, 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 and this. And you don't realize when kind of your story ends and someone else's begins. And that's kind of how it feels to me. It's like I was tapped into someone else's opinion on what this should be or shouldn't be, as opposed to, like you said, finding it within me and remembering that this is, hey, no different than any other day, no different than the present moment that I should be in all the time, right? Or I get to be in all the time, rather. And that's how now, in retrospect, as you pointed out, it's so obvious, but yet in the moment back then, it wasn't, right? Because you wake up, someone has some nice flowers for you or a gift, and it reminds you of like all the previous things you've heard about this particular holiday in my case. And like, oh, you know, okay, so I need to do this, I need to do this, instead of to being like, you know, I get to do this, I get to spend time with someone I care about, I guess spend time with myself, right? Because that's the person I care about the most ultimately, or I should at least, so I can then care about others as much as I care about myself. But anyway, that's kind of my take. That's I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how it comes up for me right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I heard is a ton of narratives that you've been taught, societal conditioning, beliefs of things must be a certain way, beliefs of
Yeah.
sacrifice, beliefs of achievement. Um, and you know, the self love piece, and you bring it up about needing to love yourself first. And the other day on Valentine's Day, had like this epiphany and I did a video. I haven't released it yet, but I just was like, oh, this is self-love. So I always saw self-love as like lowercase self-love, loving Ashley as a individual,
Okay.
right? Like me. And so that was my plan of going on that self-love journey, was to make Ashley, her life better, to ensure that her dream looked better and that she felt better about herself. But the problem is, not a problem, but the truth is there is only one here. So self is actually a capital letter self. And when we are doing self love for reasons of lowercase self love, like intentionally to only better gain ourselves, we're still dabbling into the ego belief system. We're still dabbling into the sense of separated self, the sense of duality. And does that mean that you are on the wrong track? No. Is that a catalyst to the uppercase self-love, to the realization of the oneness and the knowingness of the more I better myself, the better I see the self, right? Everybody's a projection of you. So when you work on your lowercase self, Constantine, you can have the mission for the greater self, because when you've, say, worked through a narrative of worthiness
Okay.
and someone doesn't buy you a gift for Valentine's Day, that no longer is a reflection that bothers you. You still love them just as much, and you still love yourself just as much, because your worthiness narrative of needing someone to show you ego level love is no longer there. So what did you do? You, in the process of working on little self, impacted big self, because there is only big self here. I
I
know that
love
was
it.
like a lot of rabbit
No, no,
holes.
no, no. I want to dive into that really quick because it's so beautiful, right? Because when, let's say, you have an expectation perhaps around the gift because of the holiday, and then that gift either doesn't stand up to your expectation or doesn't happen, then it's easy to go down in the spiral of no one loves me, no one cares about me. But that really what I have found, because I've been there myself in the past, a long time ago, is just a reflection of how I feel about that little self you mentioned inside.
Mhm.
So that's why, if the way I say it now, and thank you for pointing it out again, which is beautiful, or reminding me again, let's put it that way, is it comes back full circle. Because if I feel loved at the self level and I'm showing my, then it doesn't really matter if I receive something externally that's at the ego level. That
Right.
perhaps, can it, dare I say, can it be that like that's a cherry on top of the cake? Like you still have the cake because you have the self love. If something happens at the ego level, that's just a bonus, or it's maybe not even that. But that's kind of what
It's
comes up for
nothing.
me.
I feel like it's nothing. I feel like it's not even a bonus, because you don't, it doesn't hold weight at all, right? Like that gift doesn't hold weight either way. Like if someone gives you a gift, great. Like, of course, at the ego level of illusion, you're going to tell them thank you, give them a hug. But your internal narrative never depended either way on that. And so
Mm,
we constantly are trying to correlate cause and effect, or we're trying to look at effect and believing it's always the cause. So when someone doesn't give you a gift, which is an effect, but that's not what we're seeing it as. We're seeing it as a cause of me being unworthy of love, when the cause is something much greater than that.
yeah,
You are
gotcha.
trying to use effects as the cause and the effect, when instead the cause is somewhere else, and it's always within the mind. So I saw a girl the other day do an amazing representation of cause and effect, and she says, I'm just going to do it here because she took it from a professor of some sort, and I think it's beautiful. So supposedly a professor, college professor, walks in to his class, and it's all about cause and effect. And he holds up his hand like this, and he has a piece of crumpled paper in it, and he drops it. And he said, what was the cause of that piece of paper dropping from the hand, or dropping? And the whole class is like, the hand opening. And the professor's like, no, that wasn't the cause. The cause was the mind that decided to open the hand and drop the piece of paper. And so that's where we get level confusion all of the time. And that's what keeps us stuck from truly experiencing self-love at the capital level self-love, is because we're constantly using the illusion as a place for cause when it's only a place for effect.
I love that, because now let's take it back to the example of a gift. So if you don't receive the gift, you're like, oh, it's because that person doesn't love me. So that's what you're thinking as, the hand dropping the paper, right? As the person doesn't love me. But really, if you look at it as, okay, what's that a reflection on? Then it goes back to
Because I'm not
the
lovable.
source. Exactly. I'm not doing that to myself. That's actually deep. And I love that analogy because it's so visual, and I'm a very visual person. And it resonates so much because it's easy to always look on the surface. And I say that because I've been there myself so many times. It's like, oh, this happened because of this, because it's obvious, let's call it, right? But we rarely stop and go a level deeper and understand. And it's beautiful you mentioned that, because when I work with people on looking at the stories of their life and uncovering, let's say, gifts and their why and their purpose, we always get much deeper in. Like, the first layer is not the layer you want to be at. And even then, it might be a few layers deep before you realize what's driving whatever behavior, whatever story you are telling. And it's so beautiful. I never thought of it to look at it the way when it comes to self-love as well, until you pointed out right now. So it's beautiful with the analogy, because it's like, okay, if something is reflected outside of me, so I feel a certain way, that means that the root cause is actually a bit deeper than most of us think.
Oh, it always is. I mean, it's like I said, we are always looking at the illusion for effect. And to be honest with you, every individual body is a part of that illusion. And it always goes back to the mind. The mind is what is holding what gets projected. So the cause is always back at the level of the mind. Like they're it was so beautiful. A client of mine is listening to Gary Renard's book, The Disappearance of the Universe, which I highly recommend if that resonates to anyone to listen to it. And she came to me, and I've listened to this book a million times, and she's like, there is no problems. And I was like, there is no problems. There isn't. There's only your perception of an external event that deciphers it to be a problem. There literally is no problems. Period. And I know people are like, but, I'm going through cancer, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But you're the one viewing it as a problem. And I'm sorry. I mean, that's the truth. And to get to the place of capital level self-love and, abundance, if we get to it, you must take radical self-ownership.
Yeah,
Radical self-ownership. There's only one mind here, and it is projecting everything out, and you get to view it from your little lens of Constantine, and I get to view it from my little lens of Ashley. But in fact, we're the mind. We are the creator of this place.
I love that you went there, because something that came up for me as you're sharing that is something that actually has been a huge topic this week for me in my professional life, in my coaching and mentorship, even in my personal life. It came up a lot. This idea that in society nowadays, or in the world out there at large, and that was me for a long time, and even occasionally catch myself doing this, it's like things are happening to you, right? So then if the things are happening to you, then of course it's easy to be in that situation that you described, because you're always playing the victim. So cancer happened to me, this car accident happened to me, this job layoff happened to me. And then what I've had a huge revelation on this week, and this is not new, but it's something that I've done a lot more digging into, is this idea of things happening for you.
Mm.
And the exercise I've done myself, and then I've given it to a few people this week, and it's been pretty much a huge revelation for all of us. Is like, take a piece of paper, put a line down the middle. On the left, write down how things are happening to you, like the old way. And on the left, and then on the right, you write down how is this happening for you.
Mm.
And to see the shift that happens when you realize, wait a second, there's all these different perspectives I forgot or I never paid attention to, and then shifts it. Of course, when it gets to more hard stuff, like trauma and a disease, it's a bit harder to find how that's happening for you, but it can point in the direction of how you can potentially look for the cause and start to remediate the situation should you want to. At least that's how I see it right now. I'm curious to see your take.
Yeah. I mean, so I haven't really talked in those words in a long time. And I know when I really made that shift from happening to me to for me, like that was a huge awakening for me, a huge ability to see how impactful my perception actually is. But when I hear you say that, I'm like, okay, how do I think these days? Because I've continued to unpack more and
Mhm.
more and more layers. So I would invite you to add a third stage, a third option.
Okay.
And what about these things are happening of me?
Of me. Okay, can you let's dig into that
Meaning I
because
created them. Meaning, what is the because when we say things are happening to me, that's external, right? Someone's doing to you. But so is things are happening for me. That is still an external entity doing something for you, right? Externally.
that's
Again, viewing it
I know what you
externally.
mean. I mean, personally, I don't see it that way. I'm with you because I'm a true believer that we co-create absolutely everything that's happening for us. But you're right because if you look at the language, I guess you're absolutely right. When you say for me, you're doing this for me. They're doing this for me. So I can
It's like a
definitely see
gift.
that. And maybe yeah, the words have to be changed. I want. Oh, that's actually beautiful.
But I don't think, I mean, I truly think that there is three options here because I remember living a life of life happening to me. And I vividly remember that switch to life happening for me and how empowering that was and how beautiful. And then now that you just had this conversation in the moment, I'm like, wait, I now think about life happening of me. So I don't think one is right or wrong. I think they're all stages of the layering, the unpeeling of the layers. And I know we can teeter back and forth. I mean, don't get me wrong, like that is not how I always think. There is times when my day is going to shit and I think life is happening to me. And then I have to take myself back through the stage of, this is happening of you. Like, what are you showing yourself, Ashley? What is the forgiveness opportunity in this moment? What is the layer that this relationship, this interaction, this event is meant to provide an unpeeling of?
And I love that you said that because that's actually so interesting. I had a conversation with one of my mentors yesterday, and what he said was pretty much bringing everything together that I was going through all week and thinking this, and I'll explain in a second. But the saying goes like this: you can never not be human. And that hits so hard with me because being on this path, I'm like, well, I know better now. I remember. But then the next day happens, something externally happens, let's call it, and then I forget. And then you get to the point where like I did, let's say Monday, so a week ago now, where I was beating myself up for a while. And I didn't catch myself until, of course, I did, and then I could remedy the situation. And in meditation, what it came to me was this idea that these sometimes happen for us or of us to remind us of the illusion we're in. And essentially, not only that, but to remind us that nothing is perfect in this illusion. Because if you look at the universal laws and you look at nature around you, there is no perfection. And when we strive for perfection, which I still catch myself doing, then the universe is like, hey, remember, you're still human. You still get to make mistakes and still be okay. And that's kind of what, if I'm understanding what you said, that's kind of what you're saying, right? You still catch yourself sometimes being like, oh, this is happening to me or for
Mhm.
me before it's off me.
Right. Yeah. And, to use the languages I would use is I catch myself entering back to the ego belief system, viewing
Yeah.
through the ego lens, the illusion. And I believe that the goal here is to no longer ever put the glasses of the ego on again and to fully view the illusion through, your high self or the Holy Spirit or whatever you call the entity that is. Um, and then of course you lay the body aside because when you start to see truth 100% of the time you can no longer remain in an illusion, right? It's kind of like a dream. Think of it this way. So how often when you're in a very vivid dream have you experienced where you are aware you're in the dream but you're trying to wake yourself up? Like say you have to go to the
Yes.
bathroom. This happens to me a lot when I have to go to the bathroom. It's like, do I get up? Do I stay in this dream? Do I get up?
Yes.
Do I stay in this dream? And to me that's the same as like the walking up the ladder to full enlightenment. And the full wake up is when you're no longer in that dream. You're no longer inhabiting whatever that body was you were having in that dream, but you have fully woken. And right now we're kind of like going back and forth. Do I wake up? Do I not wake up? And you got to continue to peel back layers. Like in the dream, I got to like convince myself, no, you're going to piss the bed if you don't get up and go use that toilet because you're in a dream. This isn't real. You're not really here. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't know, like,
I love that, and I can resonate with it 100% because I've been in the situation of. I mean, I don't yet recall most of my dreams, but there've been many times when I wake up and I'm like, but I want to go back because this dream was awesome. I want to see where it goes, and then you force yourself to stay in it until you see you can't anymore, and it's such a
that's what
beautiful
we're doing
analogy.
here.
Yeah, but I mean, going back to for a second, right? This is an illusion, which means perfection is not real, in a way, right? Because that's what that tells me, and this is my opinion, that then unconditional love, pure unconditional love, is also not necessarily attainable because that's perfection.
So, yes and no. The reflection of unconditional love exists within the illusion because that's what we are. So, the holy grail of getting there, of remembering, of just being, is that enlightenment I talk about. So, it'd be like that final
Yeah.
stage of where you really know you got to go to the bathroom and you're pulling yourself out. Like it's that final stage. But really, what I believe is like God makes that final step. He grabs you and brings you back to where home is, where truth is. But the reflection exists here. But yes, you are right. In this illusion, true unconditional love does not exist. So that is the problem we always run into when we are seeking that unconditional love in the illusion. It can never be found there. That's why literally, I don't care how happy you are in your marriage or how much you love your partner. There are times that they have irritated you, that they have frustrated you, that they have made you angry, because true unconditional love cannot be found in anything that is of the illusion. And that extra body is of the illusion, right? The body is an illusion. So Patrick is a part of his body is a part of the illusion. Now his actual being of what he is a piece of the spirit, like the one spirit that is here. That is
Yeah.
how you can create a holy relationship through him. I can see that our relationship as bodies is meant to be some of those life happens of me moments, right? Like, here's an example. When we first got together, he cooks. He's an absolutely amazing cook. And I'm so blessed because for so many years when I was married, I was the cook. And I was so resentful. I was like, why can't anybody else in this freaking house cook? Why do I always got to cook? And now the coin is flipped of duality, right? Patrick cooks all of the time. But when we first got together, I wanted to cook him something. So it was super easy. It was grilled cheese. And like I was a master at making grilled cheese, or was back in the day because I had a son and he loved it. I burnt the freaking grilled cheese, Constantine, like charred. But
Ooh.
you would have thought that World War III was happening. The rage, the sadness, the pain that came boiling out of me was incredible. It was absolutely astronomical because it prickled a whole bunch of narratives, right? If I'm not perfect, I'm not accept, like tons of worthy narratives. And thank goodness Patrick was at a different place in his life. And he just held this safe space for me. Because what I was really doing, I was trying to project out with attack and get him to meet me with attack. But instead, he saw my attack as the cry for love it actually was. And he met me with love, which means not judgment, allowing safe space, and not attacking back, right? Not being like, calm the fuck down, Ashley. Like, this is crazy. It's just a grilled cheese. Like, it just was. And I let out so much stuff. But that is what the body relationship of Patrick and I is for, is the ability through one another to be in those moments of the person that can extend love and instead of meeting with attack. And I will tell you, when I first met Patrick versus where I am today is like astronomical. And a huge piece is that we have been able to turn our special relationship into a holy relationship most of the time, where we see it as a catalyst for our enlightenment and our remembrance, rather than I need to find my specialness in you, Patrick. You need to give me my happiness and peace, whether that's through gifts, through sex. I mean, sex, like, that's a whole topic we should cover. Write that
Yeah.
down, because I think that is a huge thing in today's society. But it's not. I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this. I hope my point was sought, because I have no fucking clue where I am now.
No, but what I love, actually, I mean, that story, oh, I loved every single piece of it. And, I was visual there with you, and I know exactly what you were going through. And it's interesting because, like, it brought up the idea of the mirroring concept again, because you were projecting outwards, and instead of him mirroring that back to you, he was able to be in a space where he could give you the compassion and the love you actually needed to be able to move out of the fear state you were in.
Yes.
And as I look back at my life and different situations, wow, that's actually magnificent, because I want to be able to do that for people, and yet I'm not at this point. And this gave me another couple of, like, remembrance points, like, oh, this is how I could approach this that I hadn't considered before. Because I keep getting this message of, like, come from a place of compassion and love. And I'm like, okay, I know what it is, and do it. But then when you reflect back, you're like, oh, there wasn't really compassion and love. There was maybe some judgment. There was maybe
Right.
something else there. And the example you gave is so beautiful. I want to make a reel out of it. If you're okay with it, I want to post it, because it's so
Yeah.
beautiful what you said there. It's like,
I love
anyway,
it.
yeah, no, I love that.
But I think what you're saying, Constantine, about how you've gotten caught up is because we're so focused at the level of form, right? So we know, like, we can picture what Patrick looked like, which was like calm, loving, hugs, it's okay. But really, that doesn't matter when it's coming, when the content, meaning the intention, what's really going on inside your own mind, is that of judgment and fear and everything else. He met me at the level of the mind, where the cause was, right? Yes, he showed me those things at the level of effect, don't get me wrong, but he also met me at the level of cause, at the mind, in that same state, that state of true not judgment, truly no judgment in that moment. Now, if he would have just done at the level of form, hugs, it's okay, Ashley, but he was at the level of judgment, would I have calmed down? Yes. Would I have released whatever those crazy ass narratives were and the weight, and released some of that own judgment of myself? No, because that happened at the level of the mind.
That's powerful.
And that's
I
where it
feel,
goes back to self-love, though, your own work, right? The little self.
yes, 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 yes. I want to dig a bit deeper, because honestly, this is fascinating to me, and I'm still having a harder time understanding, in this example, how the difference between coming at the level of the mind and coming at the level of the cause, this area, right? Like with the hugs, like you gave an example. So let's actually dig a bit deeper. How does coming at the level of the mind in this example differ in different ways from coming at the level of the cause? Because you mentioned the hug, you mentioned, about telling you it's okay and all those things, but at the level of the mind, I'm still not quite there yet myself.
Okay, so again, when we did the thing like this, right, and
Yes.
open the hand. So if we say the opening of the hand was Patrick hugging me, saying I love you, showing all these very caring, non-judgmental things, that's the opening of the hand.
Okay.
But that wasn't actually the cause of those actions.
Yes, of course.
The cause came from here for it to actually be genuine. So let me pull you away from that exact example, because that might be difficult. But a common statement people say is keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer.
Yes.
So if we use an illusionary word, the intention, right? We can look at the cause as more of the intention. So when you keep your enemies closer, your intention is not of love, even though your actions may show that, like inviting them to all the parties, calling them all the time, really including them in your life, but your intention is that of fear. because they're an enemy.
Yes.
So that is what I'm talking about. Patrick was not coming from fear at the level of the mind. Patrick was truly coming from unconditional love. And I knew that at the level of the mind. That's why my mind started to heal. That's why I have come leaps and bounds from this relationship, because a lot of the healing has occurred at the deepest level possible, which is the level of the mind, which is the unwinding of the ego. Does that make more sense?
Absolutely, 100%. So then let me ask you this: for someone wanting to practice this and get to that point, let's say I want to be doing that for someone in my life. Then maybe let's say they're struggling. Could be a partner, could be let's say a parent, a brother. Doesn't even matter, a friend. Then are we to do both, like coming from the level of the hand and then the level of the mind? So like, give the hug, say it's okay, this is going, and at the same time coming from that conditional spot? Or do we want to excel beyond the hand illusion and go straight to the mind? But I'm not sure how that would look like in reality. That's what I'm at right now, but I love everything you said.
So when you heal at the level of the mind and you come from the level of the mind, this all happens, right? Like when you come from unconditional love, you don't think about the effect, because the effect is that, because it's coming from unconditional love, right? It's not coming from, like, you don't have to filter it through like, oh, am I doing loving things? Because I am love. I am being love. So
So it's
all the
just,
things I'm doing will be loving. Does
yeah,
that make sense?
exactly. So pretty much everything you do, from what you say, how you say it, the physical actions like the hugs and whatnot, those all, if you are at the level of the mind, they come from a place
They
of
come from
unconditional
love.
love, right? So
But a
it's not, you have
trick,
to be, okay, go ahead.
so like a trick, a lot of times I use with, not a trick, I don't know why I call it a trick, but the truth is we're not all at this place of unconditional love, right? That's where we're almost waking up from the dream and not peeing the bed, but actually going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
But is to ask yourself, like, what is my intention here in this moment? And then, kind of unpack it there, right? That's a good one. Like I always use that when they're talking about reaching out to someone, scheduling a call, putting an email. What's your intention behind that? And really unpack it. Is this coming from a place of love? And we know it's coming from a place of love if it has to do with oneness and not personal gain or personal hurt. Like it looks at the whole. Or is this coming from fear? But then when you're in the moment, really try to see that person as the defenseless child they are, because we all are. I mean, that's the goal. We can have a conversation a different day to get back to
Yeah.
that defenseless child within. That's our innate state. A child that loves unconditionally, is curious, filled with wonder, and defenseless. But to see their actions as a cry for love. So if a child is crying for love, unless you have some other things going on yourself, right? What are you going to meet that child with? You're going to meet them with love, right?
Yeah,
So it's
beautiful.
about you being able to be self-aware, right? Little self-aware for the big self. And that only happens through starting to bring awareness, getting curious about the mirrors in your life, and then taking radical ownership that person is a mirror. That's why it's bothering you, because it is never attack. It is only ever a cry for love. It is your perception that turns it into attack and therefore meets it with attack. And then you've just lost the entire point. Does that make sense?
100%. I love this so much, because I mean, I find myself there at times. Like we talked about this, right? Sometimes old ways still make their way through. And as you're talking about looking at that person from the lens of the child, the wounded child, or the scared child, I don't remember the exact words you used, but the child,
Defenseless.
defenseless, yes, defenseless child. That also reminded me of, we can look at ourselves the same way. So when something bothers us, when something is wrong, we can look at ourselves as that defenseless child and then bring in that unconditional love. And
Mhm.
that's powerful right there, because you switch my perspective on a couple of things there. But that's, now I can look at it and be like, oh, if I feel bad because I didn't do something, or there's some negative emotion coming up, now I can flip the script and say, okay, well, I'm this defenseless child. How can I come from a place of love and understanding?
Mhm.
Which is not, it's probably easier to say than do, but at the same time, it's once you have the right perspective, like you said, everything shifts.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And a big key to this is there will be more moments at the beginning of your adventure or journey that you do not practice that. There will be way more moments that you meet attack with attack, that you meet people with attack. But a key thing here that I don't think is talked about enough in the personal development journey, in the spiritual journey, in the self-help journey, is that it doesn't matter. And we make it matter, and when we make things matter, we create shame and guilt where shame and guilt does not exist. So then we just create more layers to this damn onion as we're trying to peel the onion. So say you catch yourself with attack, you reflect afterwards and you're like, yep, okay, and you release it. Because first of all, the goal is to live in the present moment,
Yes.
and you can't change the past, and the past does not predict the future. I know we are taught that, and I used to say that statement all the time, but the past only predicts the future when you allow yourself to enter the ego belief system and to view the future, to allow the ego to pull you from the present moment. So yes, in the illusion, the ego is constantly trying to get the past to predict the future, because that's how it robs you of all the endless abundance that lies in the current moment.
100%. And
We didn't even talk about abundance.
yeah, I mean, that's, let's take a few minutes on that as we get to wrap this up, because everything you've talked about, I mean, if we talked about love and self-love, right? If we get to a state of more unconditional love in our life, right, that's going to lead to more abundance. And abundance, of course, there's always so many definitions, but abundance is more than just financial abundance, right? It's abundance in every aspect of your life. But it starts with love, because until you find that love within you, it's very hard to have the, I call it true abundance for lack of a better term, but the abundance that really brings out the best in you, the
Mhm.
joy, the happiness, the fulfillment, everything to do with what makes you you, unique in this illusion.
Mhm.
How do you see abundance, and how do you see, like, do you have a definition for it that might be different than what most people call abundance?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big focus today is on, again, illusion level abundance, which would be
Mhm.
like relationships, status, money, even happiness within in the illusion. And so those are all individual wells of abundance, right? They're separate, like money is separate from love, separate from this. And where I see true abundance lies is in the remembrance that you are unconditional love, and tapping into the the navigator of that, which is the Holy Spirit, or your, oops, there we go, thumbs, which is the Holy Spirit or your highest self. It is your guide here. It is the one that knows all of your abundance. So when you use that as your well of abundance, then you no longer have laser focused on specific things in the illusion containing your abundance. So that means if you have illusion level abundance definitions of, like, say, money or something specific at the level of the illusion, that means the second you no longer have that, you don't feel abundant, because your abundance was based on that. But when you tap into the understanding that you are like, you are abundance, like that's what you are, is abundance, and you look to your highest self or the Holy Spirit for your abundance, you know at any moment you could go bankrupt, but that abundance will show up somewhere else, because the source is a well that never runs dry. But when you put your abundance in other things, like things in the illusion, those wells run dry.
Yeah,
So
I,
that's how I see abundance.
I love it, and I see it in a similar way as well. Now, mind you, there's a it takes a while to get to see that every day, right? Because I still get caught up, like we talked about earlier, in different illusions like this, where abundance may be more material than it should be. And material, it could be anything from, like you said, relationships to actual material things like money and possessions and whatnot. Powerful, powerful, Ashley. I know as we are coming up here, we're at like 45 minutes as a beautiful
Wow.
conversation here. Is there anything else that comes up for you that you want to share, either with me or everyone listening? Because I know we covered some really big topics here. There's a lot to reflect back on.
Oh my gosh. I hope that our conversation, granted it's after Valentine's Day, everybody had an experience of that. And hopefully our conversation, Constantine, allowed people to have a mirror of, what did that experience, what did it represent for you, and the ability to now see it as that instead of maybe the attack or the pain or the suffering or even the opposite, right? I think often we focus so much on the negative and that being a mirror. But also I was talking to a friend the other day, and we had a beautiful conversation, and she was talking about how wonderful it is to talk to me and how I help her see things so beautifully and how beautiful I am and blah, blah, blah. And I said to her, I'm just a mirror for you. So what you are seeing in me is a mirror of your own internal person. So we forget that though. Like the people
Yes,
we
we
see
do.
and like, why aren't we putting so much more weight on that? Because that's what actually matters, right? It's like a child. If you want more of something good, then you reward the goodness. More thumbs up. You reward the goodness. But if you want, but we think instead you should punish the negative, but you've put more weight on the negative, so you're going to get more negative. It doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Where
So
your focus is where you're gonna see the results, right? And you touched on something so beautiful there, and I smile because one of the things I'm doing a lot more these days, and I say these days, like in the last year, that I've been on a deeper journey, is tell people or reach out to people and say how awesome they are, or how amazing something is, or how beautiful something is. Come from a gratitude place, and I never actually stopped to think that that's actually a reflection of how I feel about myself, because it's actually 100% true. And the same
and you
happens
receive it. Because in giving is receiving, Constantine. So when
Yes.
you are sending that voice message or sending that text message, you're actually sending it to yourself. The big self, the big S.
And no wonder that when you do something for someone else, it makes you
feel
feel
great.
good, right?
And no wonder when you treat someone else like shit, even though you feel validated in the moment, you feel like shit afterwards.
Yes.
Because you literally just treated yourself that way. And I think we should maybe discuss this next week. What are your thoughts? But we often feel justified, right? Say someone murdered someone hurt someone in a way to be like, that person is fucking asshole. They're awful. And then afterwards, we still feel like shit, but we're blaming it on them why we feel like shit, when really we just told ourselves that.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that realization means you think what they did was okay, but instead an understanding of the big S, self-love. Yeah. Right? Being that extension of love. And the second you decide that one person isn't worthy, right? You can be an extension of love to like everyone, Constantine. And then all of a sudden you run into this one person and you're like, they are unworthy. You just negated all the other people because we're one. So that one person negated the entire whole. So it's meaningless, this love you gave everyone else, because you negated the whole in that piece.
Yeah. And I think what you touched on there, that really, all of it resonated with me. You said, yeah, it's not like ignoring let's call them negatives or what they've done and think that all of a sudden it's okay because you're all this unconditional love. But it's where you put your focus. So how does your perception change? So yes, they've done this terrible thing, whatever it is. It doesn't even have to go up to murder, right? Because more people can relate. I would imagine if you take something that's personal. Like for me, let's say someone cuts me off in traffic, right? That's an example that most people can resonate with. Okay, they could be a jerk, but they could also be someone running late to the hospital to see their newborn son, or they have someone sick in their car. You don't know any of that.
Mhm.
So in that example, and in what you just described as well, is like it really doesn't matter what they're doing. It matters how you perceive that and what focus you put on it. Yes, the fact that coming off in traffic doesn't change it. That's probably not something that one should do because of many reasons. But that's if you focus, then it shifts to like the love towards someone or like your perception as, and everything else becomes so much easier. You're not going to be pissed off the rest of the day. You're not going to be upset for the next hour. You're not going to be, calling people up and be like, I can't believe this person did this. I almost got into an accident, right? Which was me in the past. Or if I had someone with me in the car, the next 10 minutes would be about that rather than you honk and then you get more pissed off. And at least that's how I see it right now. And it's like so beautiful to see your example because it shines even more of a light on this idea of like not ignoring the negative that's there, but where you choose to put your focus on.
Mhm. Right. And knowing like it's always the big ass. Even every time we think we're interacting with a little s, you're actually interacting with the big ass. And a reminder that it is you. Yeah. I mean, I went to murder. I just read a murder mystery book, which is
No, but that,
also an interesting concept of reading that with your highest self, the Holy Spirit, or Jesus versus the ego. But
and
it's
the reason I
important.
brought it back down from there because it's because of my own um, journey where I'm like, I'm at a stage where like I can look at the smaller things and the medium things and have that self-love and understanding come from a place when it gets to the really big things, like the really heinous things that people do. I'm still in the process
Yeah.
of remembering how to really shift my perspective on it. And I believe personally that if we can bring it down a couple of levels to where most people are, then it will be easier to relate and start building that process. Because I can't imagine this, Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is a process that can happen from one day to the next. It's a process that starts like others, maybe a bit slower as you remember. And as you remember more, you're like, oh, you know what? The murder is no different than someone cutting me off in traffic when it comes to your perspective on that person. And
Yes.
I'm not saying I'm there yet, but I can see the relation there.
Mhm. Yeah, there's no hierarchy. Like there's truly no hierarchy in forgiveness and there's no hierarchy in miracles. So that's another unwinding aspect and understanding, but it also goes into the whole concept of placing weight on things.
Yeah, because that's going to be a good topic for a future episode because I feel like that's going to be very controversial in a way because it's like how can you compare, like I just said, someone cutting you in traffic with a murderer, right? Like
Mhm.
there's for even for me, like my analytical mind is like right now is like how, and then my other side is like no, there's something that we can dig deeper. And I feel
Yeah.
like that would make a very interesting conversation, maybe even for our monthly meeting on your
Yeah.
Patreon. And speaking of that, as we're coming up here, tell people about your Patreon and where they can find you really quick.
Yes. So we have Big Miracle Energy Patreon. It's similar to this. I mean, Constantine comes on as well. We have a live group discussion. It's currently once a month. I believe I'm going to be upping it to twice a month. And it actually, the second one might come live on here. So even if you don't join the Patreon, you can check it out at least once a month. And really, it's an open discussion of being supportive and helping one another kind of see different perspectives and sharing about things we're grappling with and then holding each other accountable. Like, actually, the cool thing I didn't even think about this, Constantine, is all of us kind of made a vision for the next month of really looking through the lens of abundance and focusing
Mm,
on the abundance that we
gotcha.
already contain, right? That was our vision slash lens we want to look through for the month. So
Yeah.
if you're interested, Right Minded Thinker is the level in the Patreon. You'll also get access to a bunch of videos, old live discussions, a Discord channel, but we would love to see you there. You get to be a part of these really fun conversations.
Yeah. And then Ashley is over at Big Miracle Energy on YouTube. And you can find
Yes.
me at Unleash Thyself on YouTube or podcasts. Anywhere where you can download the podcast, you can find us. And Ashley and I had conversations on there. These conversations will make it on the podcast soon enough as well. So you'll find more of us if you care to go deeper with our journey here. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Ashley. This was
Thank you.
beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Constantine.